Hello,
Hi,
I'm Neil Ritchie, and would you like to state your name?
I'm Ann Archbold.
And what is your position at the UW?
I'm head of the lighting design program and chair of the theater and drama department.
Yes. I'm going to interview you
Okay.
about your occupation here and probably before that too,
Okay.
as I'm trying to follow the same path, hopefully. This is kind of like an occupational interview, and it's going to be about 10 to 15 minutes. Is that all right?
That's fine.
All right. Um, I guess my first question is, when did you figure out that you wanted to do something with lighting?
That's not an easy one to answer.
Or just a moment, I guess.
I don't know. I was a music major at the University of Michigan, and kind of didn't want to do that anymore. And so a friend of mine said, take a theater class, technical theater class, because it's an easy A. And so I enrolled in the Introduction to Technical Theater class. And that was the class, much like what we have here, where you go through the different areas. You work in the costume shop, you work in the scene shop, you do
I
lights.
know that one pretty well.
And I found that I had an affinity for the lighting stuff. And but that was mostly the technical stuff. But then as I started to take the design classes, again, I sort of felt like that lighting design was what was sort of calling me.
Calling you. What parts of it were, I guess, I mean, like, what made it better than costumes or sets for you?
Costumes and sets for me was making a commitment on paper to something. So it was very concrete from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Whereas lighting was so ephemeral and changeable and malleable in terms of how it related to the pieces.
Yeah.
Whether it's the play or a dance piece or whatever, it was something that even though you started with an idea, there were places you could take it.
Yeah. Like like I'd say, like, would you agree that our tech, like the lighting tech phase is probably the most interesting to watch because of all the crazy changes that
Yeah,
come.
because you have a pretty good idea going in, but you really don't know for sure what it's going to look like.
Yeah. So you get there.
So you get there, and you can change it.
Yeah, or keep it if you like it.
Or keep it. Yeah.
Um, so so that happened. So then you graduated college with a theater major,
Theater and music.
theater and music double
Yeah.
major.
Yeah.
And then what did you do after? Like, did you go directly follow that lighting path? Like, did you say, I'm out of college, let me get my hands into some work that I can get into, or did you take another route?
Well, I kind of did both. I did my mentor from Michigan had left in my third year, and
Sorry.
we go to sleep. No, it's the
Okay.
had left in my third year and went to the University of Virginia, and I really didn't have a lot of opportunities to design because I got into it so late. I didn't get into it till the second semester of my junior year.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like I had enough experience doing lighting, and so um, he he and I sort of made a deal where he said, "Come down to the University of Virginia for a year." He said, "I know you're a good electrician. I don't know if you're a good designer." He said, "So come down here and be in the graduate program for a year, and at the end of that year, I'll you and I'll have a conversation as to whether you should keep doing this or whether you're next to an electrician. You can always do that, but whether or not you're a designer remains to be seen."
And you felt like you were definitely a designer.
I didn't know because
Uh-huh.
I'd only done a couple of dance pieces. I didn't really know. So I went down to the University of Virginia and designed a lot. And then we had this conversation at the end of the year, as was promised. You know, it was one of those, what's he going to say?
Yeah.
And fortunately, he said that I was one of the most talented students that he had ever taught. And so I should probably keep doing this, which was cool.
Yeah, that's a good thing to hear.
It's a good thing to hear. So now it's like, okay, now I really need to decide if I'm going to continue to get my graduate degree or what I'm going to do. So I applied to the University of Southern California and went out there and spent a semester in the graduate program and realized I didn't need to be in graduate school right now. So I started freelancing in the LA area.
Mm-hmm.
And I freelanced in the LA, Long Beach, San Diego area for 13 years. Got into the union, the United Scenic Artists Union for designers.
Oh wow, you must have been designing a lot then.
I was designing a lot. And it did some stuff for San Francisco. I did a bunch of stuff. San Francisco Opera, all kinds of theater shows. And then started doing industrials, started doing car shows.
Okay.
And did those for 10 years. And then sort of reached this point where I was 35 and it was like, okay, I either have to figure out what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so I decided that it was a good time to go back to graduate school and get my graduate degree. Because I knew eventually I wanted to teach, but not then. I wasn't ready to teach then, but I knew eventually I was going to. And the older I got, the harder it would be to go back to graduate school.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back a few, because like we kind of got like a really
I did
large.
a whole big like thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like when you were in LA and you were freelancing, which can you just define for someone who like probably doesn't really? It's kind of just like.
Sure, you're kind of constantly looking for jobs. You know, sending out resumes, sending out portfolios, using whatever relationships you've developed along the way just to get to design gigs.
Would you say it got easier and easier finding jobs, like, or was it?
Yeah, well, what I discovered was, and I was also for a day job because you need a day job. I was working in a rock and roll rental house, so I was
cool.
You know, doing roadie stuff and working for different types of things, the relighting of the Statue of Liberty, and just all kinds of a variety of things, and learning moving lights and learning dimmers and learning all the aspects of what a rock and roll rental house does. But in the evenings and the weekends, I was doing a lot of shows for free as a designer. And what I found out is, especially in LA, the more your name is in reviews, you start getting calls because people have seen you get good reviews, and so you sort of establish a reputation. And so then more phone calls start coming, and eventually they start offering you money to work. And
yeah. So it wasn't like you just got out and people were just like flocking on you.
You really had to build a reputation.
Okay. Any like particular people that you looked up to or like you found particularly helpful for like either like with like this like reputation thing or just like in general of?
Well, I was fortunate. My mentor Craig Wolf had the one I had taken lighting with at Michigan, and then he moved to Virginia, and then he had decided that in his career he wanted to start a freelance career, and so he had moved to LA, and so a lot of what I did he was designing and I was assisting, or I was his master electrician for some of the bigger shows, and then also through my roommate. It's LA. Everybody knows everybody, but there was a.
Kind of like Madison.
A friend of a friend whose cousin was Martin Ehrenstein, who was a Broadway lighting designer.
Oh, wow.
And we would go to this friend's house every Christmas at this Christmas party, and so I would sit and talk with Marty and his assistant, Larry Metzler. And I would sit and talk with them they'd say, what are you doing? What have you been designing? What have you been doing? I think you should talk to this person. I think you should go here. And every year Marty would say, and you need to join the union. And I would say, I'm not ready. And every year he'd say, you need to join the union. And I would say, I'm not ready. Meanwhile, he's off doing his Broadway shows. And finally one year he looked at me and went, you need to apply for the union exam or I'm going to break your legs. in a loving way. And I went, oh, okay. So I did, and I got in. Yeah.
Yeah, you got all this stuff.
Yeah. So I would say Marty had a huge influence on me, and then I was privileged years later to write a chapter in a book about Marty Ehrenstein.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that was kind of cool.
It's like a torch going.
Yeah. So Marty and Craig were the two.
Marty and Craig?
Yeah.
Describe your feelings of like making it to the union, of like that moment of just like, I know you did, like you were not wanting to,
right,
but then you did it. And what was that? I mean, like, was it better than you thought? Was it more?
Well, it's more because it was such a prestigious thing. It
Yeah.
was, what every designer strived for, and I know I've heard horror stories. People took the union exam 2 or 3 times, and what it basically meant, it doesn't so much anymore, but at the time it meant that you had made it as a designer. You had reached a certain level in your career and your skills that you were a member of the United States Artists.
Hmm.
And so the reason I didn't take it is I didn't think I was ready. I didn't think my skill level was there. I didn't think I had done enough. So I kept putting it off and putting it off. And
even though you had like all of that experience,
but because I had this thing in my mind that this is what separated the men from the boys, if you will.
Yeah.
That you're a designer, and then now you're a USA designer. You're up here somewhere, and you're, and so it was pretty incredible feeling to get in the union and just be a member of that club.
Yeah, to have made it.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay, so that we've gone through a lot. Quickly, you did grad school.
Mm-hmm.
You got it, obviously. No.
I went back to the San Diego State to study with Craig again.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Theater really is a small world.
It is. I went to San Diego State mostly because I really valued Craig as a mentor, but also it was one of those. He knew my skill level at this point. I'm in the union. I've been designing. I've been doing regional theater, so it wasn't like starting over at a graduate school.
Yeah, it was continuing something.
Yeah.
And after that grad school, you did more designing.
Well, that's what I thought was going to happen.
Oh.
I actually did my thesis show at the Old Globe because
wow.
I was a professional. I was a USA designer, so rather than design at San Diego State, So it was weird. But the day after I graduated, I got a phone call from Florida State saying, "So do you want to come down and be a visiting assistant professor for a year?"
Oh.
And I thought, okay, I'm going to get my MFA, and then I'm going to continue on with my professional career. And now that I have contacts at the Old Globe, I can work in San Diego, and this will be great.
Uh-huh.
And had not even thought about teaching yet. I thought,
Weird.
when I'm like in my 50s, I'll teach. So I went down to Florida State. I spent a year there, and then they asked me to stay another year. And then the position came open, and I didn't apply, and they basically said, "You're going to apply for the position." And so I applied for the position. I became from a visiting assistant professor to assistant professor. Was there for 6 years. Went through tenure, got tenure, and then came here.
Now you're here.
And now I'm here.
And I'm so glad. One final question. This is the last one. We only have we have 2 minutes. Yeah. What would be your advice for someone like me who is graduating soon,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about pursuing a career in lighting design of some sort?
Mm-hmm.
What would be like your best tips in, I guess, a minute?
Just in a minute. Do as much of everything that you can.
Uh-huh.
Get a really good foundation in everything, in electrics, in moving lights. Just, do like I did, work in a rental house, assist whenever the opportunity comes up. Just do it. Get as much experience as you can,
Mm-hmm.
because then that'll help you decide what you then want to narrow your focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And, do that for a few years and just sort of, get well known. People,
Obviously, networking,
get a reputation
theme.
as being a hard worker and, on time and, just all the things that people value. And you'll meet a bunch of people, and then doors should start to open for you in terms of what you want to narrow down to. If it's design, then at some point start thinking about, I'm only going to assistant design or,
Mm-hmm.
and leave the electrician stuff behind.
10
seconds. 30
yes,
seconds.
yes, no question.
Okay.
Grad school after undergrad, yes, or wait a little bit.
Wait a little bit.
How long would you recommend?
Not 13 years.
Okay.
2 or 3 years.
All right.
And that's certainly what the better graduate schools want to see in a student, is that they want to see them have 2 or 3 years of experience before they come to grad school.
Excellent. Is there anything else you want to say
Nope.
in 10 seconds?
That's it.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ann Archbold, head of the theater department and lighting design here at UW-Madison. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.